Tonight's story drifts into the heart of the bayou. A missing husband, a lonely houseboat, and nights broken by a steady tapping from beneath the water. But when the truth finally rises from the swamp, it isn't love that comes back, it's hunger. And in the silence of the bayou, the tapping never really stops. Welcome to Nightmare Proof, where true horror comes alive. Here, you'll hear real stories of the strange, the disturbing, and the unexplainable. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to face the darkness. I live alone in a houseboat on the bayou. Something's been tapping at the hull at night. It's been about a month now that Kenny's been gone. 3 weeks and 5 days to be exact. He left in his pirogue one night just after sunset to go frogging and never came back. Man just up and disappeared like a fart in the wind. Now, it's just me out here on this old houseboat, alone. The law found the pirogue a week later, hung up on a cypress knee. No oar, no frogs, no Kenny. Just a dozen crushed up Budweiser cans and half a pack of Marlboro Reds. Only thing is, Kenny didn't smoke. They had it towed back in, and I haven't seen the damn thing since. Kept it for evidence, Sheriff Landry said. So, now I'm stuck out here. Unless I want to trudge through 50 miles or so of isolated swampland and Kenny left with the one good pair of rubber boots we had. Search only went on for a couple more days after that, to no avail, of course. After that much time in the bog, you don't expect to find a body, at least not intact. They called it off on the 1st of October. My husband, Kenny Thibodeau, presumed dead, but still officially considered a missing person. Some said the gators must have got him. Some thought he ran off with another woman. Some had what I'll just call other theories. But no one in the Atchafalaya Basin thought it was an accident. Hell, I ain't stupid. I know exactly what they all whisper about me. It's all the same. Damn shit they've been saying since I was a youngin'. Jezebel, Putane, Swamp Witch. Ha, let 'em keep talking. Don't bother me none. Not anymore. You gotta have real thick skin out in the bayou or you'll get tore up from the floor up. Me, I can hold my own, but no one comes around here anymore. Not since Kenny's been gone. Up until a few nights ago, that island I was in the galley, deheading a batch of shrimp to fry up, when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. I froze with the knife in my hand. Wasn't expecting visitors. Phone never rang. Maybe Landry was poking around with more questions again. I set the knife down onto the counter next to the bowl, then crept over to the front window to peek out. As I squinted through the dense blackness of the night, I saw something. Out on the deck was the faint outline of a large figure standing at the edge, but it wasn't the sheriff. My heart dropped. I stumbled backward from the window in a panic and ran for the knife on the counter. My fingers wrapped around the handle and tap, tap, tap. The sound pulsed through the floorboards beneath my feet. Sharp, like the edge of a knuckle hitting a hollow door. I lifted the knife, shrimp guts still dripping from the edge of the blade. Then, I took a deep breath and flipped the deck light on. Nothing. I paused for a moment, scanning what little area was illuminated by the dim, flickering yellow light. No boats, no critters, no large, dark figures. Just a cacophony of cicadas screaming into the void, and the glimmering eyes of all the frogs Kenny never caught. I shut the light back off and threw the curtains closed. Maisla? My mind was playing tricks on me. At least that's what I thought at the time, must have just been a log bumping into the pontoons. I shrugged it off and went back to the shrimp. Deveined, cleaned, and battered, I chucked the shrimp heads out the galley window for the catfish, then sat down and had myself a good supper. Once I'd picked up the mess and saved the dishes, I went off to get washed up before bed. After I'd settled in under the covers, I started thinking about Kenny. He wasn't a bad man. Not really. Sure, he was a rough around the edges kuyan with a mean streak like a water moccasin when he got to drinking. But he meant well. I turned over and stared at the empty side of the bed, listening to the toads sing me to sleep. The light of the next morning cut through the cabin window like a fillet knife through a sac a lait. I dragged myself up and threw on a pot of coffee. French roast. I had a feeling I'd need the kick in the ass that day. I sat on the front deck, sipping and gazing out into the morning mist, when I heard the unmistakable sound of an outboard approaching. I leaned forward. It was Sheriff Landry. He pulled his boat up along starboard and shut the engine off. "Hey, Cherie, how you holding up?" "I'm doing all right. How's your mom and them?" "Oh, just fine," he chuckled. "Mind if I get down for a second? Just got a couple more questions for you." "Allen's," I said, gesturing for him to come aboard. "Let me get you a cup of coffee." No, that's okay. Already had my fill this morning." I nodded. He stepped onto the deck with his hands resting on his belt and shuffled toward me, his boots click-clacking against the brittle wood. Now, I'm not one to pry into the personal affairs between a husband and his wife, but since this is still an ongoing investigation, I gotta ask, how was your relationship with Kenny? I took a long sip, then set the mug down. Suppose it was like any other, I guess. "Did you two ever fight?" "Sometimes," I shrugged. He paused for a beat, then spat out his wad of dip into the water. "Were y'all fighting the night he came up missing?" "Not that I recall." "Not that you recall." Well, I know one thing," he said, turning to look out into the water. "There's something fishy about all this. Man didn't just disappear something. Musta happened to him." I took a deep breath. "Sheriff, I want to know where he's at just as much as y'all do." "That's so." He smiled, and I folded my arms in front of me. "Funny thing is, Mrs. Thibodeau, you ain't cried once since Kenny's been gone." A cool breeze kicked up just then, sending the knotted up seashells and bones I used as a wind chime clanging together. He looked over at it with a hairy eyeball. "With all due respect, Landry, I do my crying alone. Now, can I get back to my coffee? Got a lot to do today. Always something needs fixin' on this old houseboat." He tipped his hat and shot another stream of orange spit over the side of the deck, then got back in his boat and took off. Day flew by after that. Between baiting and throwing out the trot lines, setting up crab traps, and replacing a rotten deckboard, I already had my hands full. But then, when I went to scrape the algae off the sides of the pontoons, I found a damn leak that needed patching. There was a small hole in the one sitting right under the galley. Looked like something sharp had poked through it, too sharp to be a log. Maybe a snapping turtle got a hold of it, I thought. Ain't never seen one bite clean through metal before, though. Before I knew it, the sun was going down, and it was time to start seeing about fixing supper. No crabs, but when I checked my lines, I'd snagged me a catfish. After I dumped a can of tomatoes into the cast iron, I put a pot of rice cooking to go with my coubillon. I was in the middle of filleting the catfish when I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. I jerked forward, slicing a deep gash into my thumb in the process. "Murday! God damn it to hell!" It was damn near down to the bone. I grabbed a dish rag and pressed it tight against my gushing wound, holding my hands over the sink. The blood seeped right through. Drops of red slammed down against the white porcelain with urgency, splattering as they landed. Tap, tap, tap. I winced and raised my head to look out the galley window. Nothing but frog eyes shining through the night. "What in the fuck is that noise?" I shouted angrily to an empty room. "Just crickets." The frogs didn't have shit to say that time. I checked the front deck, of course, but wouldn't nobody out there. Then, I hurried over to the head to get the first aid kit, bleeding like a pig and cussing up a storm the whole way. Once I'd cleaned and bandaged up my cut, I went back into the galley, determined to finish cooking. I threw the catfish guts out the galley window, ate my fill, then went to bed. Didn't hear it again that night. Ain't nothing I could do about it right then anyway. Kenny left with the good flashlight. I was just gonna have to investigate that damn noise in the daytime. Had to be something down there in the water, tapping at the hull. The next morning, I woke up to my thumb throbbing. When I changed the bandage, let me tell ya, It was nasty redder than a boiled crawfish and oozing yellowish-green pus from the chunk of meat I'd cut out of myself. The catfish slime had gotten into my blood and lit up my whole hand like it was on fire. Damn. Musta not cleaned it good enough. I scrubbed the whole hand with Dawn, doused the gash with more rubbing alcohol, then wrapped it back up with gauze and tape. Didn't have much more time to tend to it than that. I had shit to do. First order of business, after my coffee of course, was checking the traps and lines. The air smelled like a storm coming. Deep freezer was getting low on stock, and I was running out of time. A cold spell was ripping through the bayou, and winter was right on its ass. I blared some ZZ Top while I started hauling in. One by one, I brought up an empty trap, still set with bait. It seemed only the tiny nibblers of the basin had been interested in the rotten chicken legs, until I pulled up the last trap, the one set closest to the galley window. Damn thing was mangled. I'm talking, beat the hell up. Something had tore clean through the metal caging, ripping it open and snatching the bait from inside. I slammed the ruined trap onto the deck in frustration. Damn gators, motherfucker. I stared down at the tangled mess of rusty metal. Maybe that's what's been knocking around down there, I thought. Just a canaille, overgrown reptile fucking up my traps and thieving my bait. Still, something was gnawing at me. The taps, they seemed too measured, too methodical, and always in sets of 3. Gators, well, they can't count, far as I'm aware. Had a little more luck on the trot lines. Not by much, though. Got a couple fiddlers, another good-sized blue cat, and a big stupid gar that got itself tangled up and made a mess of half the line. Had to cut him loose and lost about 50 feet. The bastard thrashed so hard he just about broke my wrist, teeth gnashing and snapping like a goddamn bear trap. Of course, my thumb was screaming after that, but I didn't have time to stop. I threw the catch in the ice chest and rebaited the rest of the line I had left. After that, it was time to figure out once and for all just what the hell was making that racket under the hull. I went around to the back to start looking there. Nothing loose, nothing out of place. I leaned forward to look over the side. Then, I heard a loud splash. I snapped back upright. The sound had come from around the other side of the houseboat. I ran back through the cabin out onto the front deck. Oh, for Christ's sake. Ice chest lid was wide open, water splattered all over the deck. I approached slowly and looked inside. Fiddlers were still flapping at the bottom, but that big blue cat, gone. Damn thing must have flopped itself out and back into the water. Lucky son of a bitch. No use in crying about it, though. I was just going to have to make do with what I had left. I closed the lid back and shoved the ice chest further from the edge with my foot. When I did, I noticed something. On the side that was closest to the water, there was something smeared across it. I blinked. It was a muddy handprint. A big one. Too big to have been mine. May. Guard day's dawn. I bent down to look closer. It wasn't an old, dried-up print. It was fresh. Wet. Slimy. Still dripping. My heart dropped. I slowly stood back up and looked out into the water. First the tapping, now this? Pa Bon. Something, or somebody, was messing with me. And they done picked the wrong one. I went inside and grabbed the salt. Then, I stomped back out and started at one end, pouring until I had a thick line of it all across the border of the deck. Now, cross that, motherfucker. I folded my arms across my chest. Bayou was still. Air was silent and heavy. The sun began to shift, peaking just above the tree line and painting the water with an orange glow. For about another hour, I searched that houseboat left, right, up, and down. Never found nothing that would explain the tapping, though. I dragged the ice chest inside to start cleaning the fish just as the nighttime critters started up their song. Figured I could get the most use out of the fiddlers by frying them up with some etouffee, so I started boiling my grease while I battered the strips of fish. My thumb was pulsing like a heartbeat by then, and the gauze was an ugly reddish brown. Wouldn't looking forward to unwrapping it later. That's when I realized I hadn't heard the taps yet. Maybe the salt had fixed it. Maybe it had been a bayou spirit, coming to taunt me. Some Tai looking to make trouble. Shit, maybe it was Kushma or the Rougarou. Swamp ain't got no shortage of boogeymen. I tried to shrug it off and finish fixin' supper, but the anticipation of hearing those taps kept me tense like a mooring line during a hurricane ready to snap at any moment. The absence of them was almost just as unsettling. By the time the food was ready, I could barely eat. That night, I laid there in the darkness and waited for them, breath held, mind racing, heart thumping. They never came. Sleep didn't find me easy. I was up half the damn night, tossing and turning, trying to listen, trying to forget about it. The thoughts were eating me alive, and my body was struck with fever. Sweat seeped out from every pore, soaking my hair and burning my eyes. And my thumb hurt so bad I was about ready to get up and cut the damn thing off. I rested my eyes for what felt like only a second before that orange beam cut through. My body was stiff. Felt like a damn corpse rising up. I looked down at my hand and realized I'd forgotten to change the bandage the night before. Fuck! The whole hand was swollen and starting to turn purple near the thumb. I hobbled over to the head, trembling. As soon as I unwrapped the gauze, the smell of rot hit the air instantly. The edges of my wound had turned black, and green ooze cracked through the thick crust of yellow every time I moved it. I was gonna need something stronger than alcohol, but I couldn't afford no doctor. I went over to the closet, grabbed the hurricane lamp, and carried it back to the head with me. Carefully, I unscrewed the top, bit down on a rag, then poured the kerosene over my hand, dousing the wound. It fizzed up like Coke on a battery when it hit the scab. As it mixed with the pus and blood, it let out a hiss, the infection being drawn out. My whole body locked up as the pain ripped through me. Felt like 1,000 fire ants chewing on me at once. I bit down on that rag so hard I tore a hole through it. Between the fumes and the agony, I nearly passed out. But it had to be done. Left the kerosene on there till it stopped burning, then rinsed off the slurry of brown foam that had collected on my thumb. With the hard part over with, I smeared a glob of pine resin over the cut, then wrapped it back up real tight with fresh gauze and tape. That ought to do it, I thought. At least the taps seemed to be gone for now, and I could focus on handling my business. Goes without saying, didn't need the coffee that morning, so I got myself dressed and headed out front to start my day. I took a deep breath, pulling the thick swamp air into my lungs. It didn't settle right. I scrunched my eyebrows. There was a smell to it, an odor that didn't belong, something unnatural. Couldn't quite put my finger on what exactly it was, but I knew it wouldn't right. That's for damn sure. Salt line was left untouched though, least my barrier was working. I bent down to pull in the trot line, and just before I got my hands on it, a bubble popped up from the water, just under where I was standing. A huge one. And then another, and another. Each bubble was bigger than the last, like something breathing down there. As they popped, a stench crept up into the air, hitting me in the face like a sack of potatoes. That smell, poo-yai, lacrotte. It was worse than a months-old dead crawfish pulled out the mud. So thick, I could taste it crawling down my throat. I backed away from the edge of the deck, covering my face with my good hand. Then, the damn phone rang, shattering the silence and making me just about shit. The bubbles stopped. I stared at the water for a second. Smell still lingered, the pungent musk of rot mixed with filth. After the fourth ring, I rushed inside to shut the phone up. "Hello?" I breathed, more as an exasperated statement rather than a greeting. "Cherie," an old, crackly-throated voice said. "Oh, hey there, Mrs. Maggie. How you doing?" "I'm making it all right, child. Hey, listen, Kenny around?" I sighed. "No, Maggie. He's still missing." "Ah, shoot. Well, tell him I need some help with my mooring line when he gets back in. Damn thing's about to come undone." "Okay, I'll let him know. You take care now. Bye-bye." I hung up the phone, shaking my head. Mrs. Maggie Wellers was the old lady that lived up the river from me. Ever since old Mr. Wellers dropped dead of a heart attack last year, Maggie's been, as we call down here, pa-tout la. Poor thing only had a handful of thoughts left, rattling around in that head of hers. Grief took the rest. The loss of her husband was just too much for her, bless her heart. Her son, Michael, had been a past lover of mine. T-Mike, they called him. He and I saw each other for a while back in high school, till he up and disappeared too. After graduation, he took off down the road, and ain't no one seen him since. Guess I got a habit of losing men to the bayou. Me and Maggie stayed in touch over the years, couldn't help but feel an obligation. She was just trying to hold on to whatever piece of her boy she had left. Kenny even started helping her out with things around the houseboat, once old Wellers kicked the bucket. Looked like now we'd both be fending for ourselves from here on out. By the time I got back out to the trot lines, the stink had almost dissipated. My thumb was still tender, but the pine resin had sealed it and took the sting out. Enough playing around time to fill up the ice chest. I went to pull at the line, but it didn't budge. What the fuck? Maybe it was snagged on a log. I yanked again, hard, and nothing. Almost felt like the damn line was pulling back. Maybe I'd hooked something too big to haul in. I planted my feet, wrapped the line around my hands twice, then ripped at it with all my might. Suddenly, the line gave way, and I went tumbling backward onto the deck. I landed hard on my tailbone, sending a shockwave up my spine like a bolt of lightning. When I lifted my head up and looked over at the line, I slammed my fist onto the wood planks and cursed into the wind. My voice echoed through the basin, sending the egrets up in flight. Every single hook was empty. All my bait was gone taken. The little bit of line I had left had snapped, leaving me only with about 4 feet's worth. Fucking useless. The bayou was testing me at every turn. I almost didn't want to get up. Thought I might just lie there, close my eyes, and let it take me. Couldn't do that though. I still had shit to do. I took a deep breath, pulled myself back onto my feet, and flung the ruined line back into the water. I went out to the back deck, praying for crabs. Only had 4 traps left, and I'd be doing real good to catch 2 or 3 in each one. Water was a little warmer than it had been in the past week or two, so I had high hopes. Shoulda known better. Empty. Ripped apart and shredded all to hell. Every single goddamn one of them. Didn't even holler that time. I laughed. I threw my head back and cackled into the face of the swamp. The turtle shot into the water. The cicadas screamed. The bullfrogs began to bellow. The toads started to sing, and a symphony of 1,000 crickets vibrated through the cypress trees. Then, the bayou suddenly fell silent. Tap, tap, tap. I about jumped right out of my skin, and then a fiery rage tore through my body like a jolt of electricity. I stomped back 3 times with the heel of my boot, slamming it down against the deck so hard it nearly cracked the brittle wood holding me up. Oh, yeah? I can do it too, motherfucker. Now what? I was infuriated. I stood there, breathing heavy, fists balled up, just waiting for it to answer me. A few seconds passed, then I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. But it was further away this time, toward the back of the house. Goddamn son of a bitch! It's on the move! And then the thought dawned on me. Maybe it wouldn't come in from underneath like I thought. Maybe it was coming from inside the houseboat. I ran in like a wild woman and started tossing shit around and tearing up the whole place, looking for whatever the fuck was tapping at me. Damn nutria rat or a possum dun crawled up and got itself stuck somewhere. Who knows? Didn't matter what kind of swamp critter it was. When I found it, I was gonna kill it. Tap, tap, tap. I pulled everything out of the cabinets and the pantry. Tap, tap, tap. I cleared out all the closets and under the bed. Tap, tap, tap. I flipped the sofa and Kenny's recliner. Tap, tap, tap. Each time they rang out, it was coming from a different spot in the house. I was bout ready to get the hammer and start ripping up the floorboards, but by that time, the sun was gonna be setting soon. I'd wasted a whole nother day with this bullshit, and I was still no closer to finding the source of that incessant racket. At least my thumb wouldn't bothering me no more. I gave up on my search for the night and went to the deep freezer. Only one pack of shrimp left and a bag of fish heads for bait. I pulled both out to start throwing. With my trot line ruined and all my traps torn to pieces, I needed to go out and set up a few jug lines so I'd have something to eat the next day. Wasn't gonna be much, but a couple fiddlers was better than nothing. About an hour had passed with no tapping, but I knew it wouldn't really gone. My heart was pounding something fierce, and I couldn't take the silence no more. I turned on the radio and started blasting Creedence Clearwater Revival through the speakers, while I gathered up some empty jugs and fashioned me some lines. I had to hurry, though that orange glow was already creeping in. Finished up just as the twilight was fading. Now I'd just have to bait the hooks, throw 'em out, and hope for the best. I picked the radio up and brought it back inside with me. Whether it was taps or silence, didn't matter. I was gonna need to drown it out. I decided to start supper first. By then, my stomach was growling at me like a hound dog. I put a pot of grits cooking, then went to the pantry to get a can of tomatoes to throw in there too. Least I had plenty dry goods on hand. And Kenny's last bottle of Jack, I bobbed my head to some Skinnerd while I drank from the bottle and stirred the grits. I tried to ignore it, but I could feel those taps start vibrating up from the floorboard through my feet while I was cleaning the shrimp. After I seasoned them, I put them to simmering in the saucepan with the tomatoes and some minced garlic. Then, I turned the fire off the grits and covered the pot. I took a deep breath. Time to go handle up on my business. Hopefully supper would be ready by the time I was done. I dumped the fish heads into a bucket and set it down by the front door while I turned on the deck light. Then, I went out front to set the jug lines. As soon as I stepped out onto the deck, something stopped me in my tracks. The salt line had been broke. A huge, muddy, wet smear draped across it, about halfway up to my door. My heart sunk. And then, I heard a noise. But it wasn't the taps. This time, it was different. A hiss. I slowly turned. There was something hanging onto the side of my boat, peering just over the edge from the water. I dropped the bucket of fish heads on the deck, and the blood splattered across my bare legs. It was Kenny. Only. But it wasn't. His eyes pierced through the night like two shiny copper pennies. His skin was a dark, muddy green, completely covered in hundreds of tiny bumps and ridges. Long, yellowed nails extended from his short, thick fingers, curling to a sharp point at the ends. They dug deep into the wood, tiny splinters peeling around them as he clung to the side of the houseboat. "No," I whispered. "Fils de putain. It's you, Kenny." He recoiled in a violent snap, slithering into the black water with a loud splash. The wave rocked the houseboat, nearly tipping me over the edge. I ran back inside, slamming the door shut and locking it behind me. My chest heaved as I gasped for air. There was no mistaking it. He'd come back. My eyes shot across to the galley. I needed a weapon. Tap, tap, tap. Fucking stop it, Kenny! Right as I got my hand on the knife, the houseboat began to shift, like something trying to pull down one side, and the damn thing went flying out of my hand. I stumbled forward and grabbed onto the kitchen counter as the whole boat slowly started to tilt toward starboard. The cabinets flew open and my Tupperware scattered all across the floor. Food went sliding off the stove, and the bottle of Jack hit the ground and shattered. The motherfucker was trying to sink me. I opened up the galley window and shrieked, "Get the hell off my boat, you goddamn couillon!" A hand shot up from the darkness, wrapping its slimy, thick fingers around the pane of my window. Those yellow claws sunk deep into the wood below, like a hot knife in butter. I swallowed hard. He wasn't trying to pull me down. He was trying to come inside. The boat slammed back down as he shot up from the murky swamp and lunged through the window. I was thrown backward into the mess of hot grits and glass, knocking my head against the floor. In a split second, he was right on top of me. My husband, Kenny Thibodeau, now a monster, a reptilian abomination, a grotesque mixture of man and beast both, but neither. The swamp had taken him. He wrapped his massive slimy fingers around my throat, poking his claws into my skin, Then he leaned in closer. My heart flopped in my chest like a brim caught in a bucket. He was cold, he was angry, and he was hungry. Slowly, the corners of his mouth pulled back into a smile, revealing a row of razor-sharp teeth dripping with black sludge. That smell. His hot breath hit me like an oven as he opened his mouth to hiss. "Hey, Cherie, did you miss me?" His grip around my neck began to tighten. I could feel the blood starting to drain from my face. This was it. He was gonna kill me. I turned away. I didn't want his ravenous gaze to be the last thing I saw before I left this world. When I did, I noticed the knife sitting there on the floor, right next to me. I smiled, then turned back to look straight into the orange glow of his copper penny eyes. I slowly reached my arm out, wrapped my fingers around the handle, then choked out, "Yeah, Kenny." I was hoping you'd come back soon. It's been about a month now that Kenny's been gone. Such a shame they never found him. Got a freezer full of meat now, though. Good enough to last all winter. 'Bout time for Sheriff Landry to bring back my damn pirogue. Ain't no evidence left to find. Besides, I'm gonna have to make a trip into town soon, running low on cigarettes. Might as well try to find me a new man down there too, while I'm at it. Always something on this old houseboat needs fixin'. And hell, would you look at that? It's almost Halloween. Maybe I'll pick me up a witch hat and a new broom at the dollar store. That ought to be festive. All in all, life ain't too bad out here in the swamp. But every once in a while, when the bayou is still and the frogs are quiet, I can still hear the faintest little tap, tap, tap. Thank you for watching Nightmare Proof. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep the nightmares alive. Have a story of your own? Send it in and you may hear it here next time. Until then, sleep well if you can.